Wanted to thank everyone again for joining us for remotathon. Remotathon is a series of interactive talks with leaders in customer success, sales enablement, and knowledge management. And we're really excited to be bringing you this summer virtual events this year. All of these sessions are recorded and available to view after today's session, and we've had some sessions already throughout the summer, and we have a couple more coming up. So we'll give more information towards the end on how you can access those and check out some of the other sessions. But yeah, just stay up to date with all things Guru, and thanks again for joining us today. So for today's session, we are so excited to be joined by Tori Belkin, who is the Senior Director of Sales and Sales Enablement at Ceros. And she's going to be talking about how their team uses Guru as their single source of truth across different teams. My name's Sydney. I'm on the product marketing team at Guru, and I have had the honor of working with Tori to prepare for today's presentation. So I will kick things over to her to introduce herself, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Sydney. Yes, I'm Tori Belkin, like Sydney said, Senior Director of Sales and Sales Enablement here at Ceros. So I started at Ceros 4.5 years ago. Feels just like yesterday, but also feels like my entire life. When I started, I was one of the first sales reps, and then 2.5 years ago, was promoted into a management role, and since then have formally taken over enablement. When I started, like I said, was one of the first reps, so enablement really didn't exist at all. So it's been really fun to grow that program and help Ceros scale, not only with the number of headcount and reps that we have, but also in terms of our sales tech stack, which obviously includes enablement.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Tori. So to get started today, can you tell us a little bit more about Ceros and kind of how you began your journey with knowledge management, rolling out Guru, and if there's anything you maybe would change looking back?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, a little bit more about Ceros. What we are is we're a cloud-based design platform that empowers designers and marketers to be able to create interactive content without the need for any coding or development work at all. So it just makes it quicker, easier, and more efficient to create really immersive experiences. So just to visualize that for you on the screen, you have on the left-hand side what a typical marketing campaign might look like, very text heavy, blog posts, PDFs, etc. With the Ceros platform, we help marketing teams get from that to what you see on the right-hand side, just a more visual, engaging experience for all. So it's a little bit more about the Ceros platform, a little bit more about why we chose Guru. So again, we're a very small company when I started, about 40 employees when I first started 4.5 years ago. So when a new rep came on, there was really just information out there. You were trolling Slack to figure out what is Ceros, what's the value prop here, how do we sell it? And when it is just one rep starting at a time, it's really easy for them to go and tap on people's shoulders to get the information that they need to onboard. But as we started to scale and more people were starting at once, it became really inefficient for people to get the same knowledge at the same time that they needed. So we wanted to implement a place for everyone to go to get the answers that they needed at the right time. Timing wise for us, that was when right before I got my promotion, we were going to onboard 5 account executives at the same time. And as part of that, I really felt that we needed to implement a knowledge management system at that very moment, because not only to save myself time from having to answer questions 5 times, but also just get the reps onboarded a bit more quickly. So that was 2.5 years ago, but I've still maintained a really strong presence in our Guru implementation, because even as I've grown as a sales leader, I think that the value of Guru for the entire organization cannot be understated, or overstated, I mean. So I've very much stayed involved in the implementation in the day-to-day with Guru, with our CSM, Jamey, and our sales enablement hire, Kelly, who's on the call today, just to make sure that we're really using it to its full potential, because the better our Guru implementation is, the better our reps are going to be able to sell Ceros. So in terms of how we thought about the rollout 2.5 years ago, we wanted to do it slow and steady on the recommendation of our Guru CSM. It was Jamey who suggested to us, you really have one chance to roll this out and get it right and get everyone to buy into it being this one source of truth. So how we did that is we got a stakeholder from various teams within the organization that were the keys to all of the knowledge, held sessions with just internally, how do we get the information into Guru, as well as with Jamey on the Guru side about best practices, how long is too long of a card, what's the right way to format everything, and also just really pitched internally the value of getting this implementation rollout correct. So saying to the customer support team, I know it's a lot to get all this information in here, but once you do, the time that you're going to save not answering questions is going to be tenfold. So let's just get it right. Let's get it going, and let's do it. So that was what we did to start. And then instead of rolling it out to the entire organization at once, we got a few people from each department into Guru to start using it and searching for information just to see how it was working. Did we have everything in there that people would be searching for? So one example of that is we have competitive battle cards, and those had been living in Google Sheets. So what we thought we would do with Guru is just give the reps little highlights from like key points, 3 key points in Guru. And what we were finding was when the reps were going in there to search for that information, they were still having to link out to another place because they wanted to get that more granular information. So knowing that, we baked out the Guru cards even further in the soft rollout just to make sure that, again, they didn't really have to leave Guru. They were trusting it as all the knowledge that I need is right here. Another thing that we did when we were testing out just with a small group was going into Slack and seeing what those people were still asking support for, which was a really good way to understand what other information can we get in there. So questions around, this particular client uses this CMS. Can we embed with that? How does that work? Getting all of those frequently asked questions into Guru before the full rollout. And also just like internal questions, like where do I go for a template for a sales contract, or who do I ask if I have a problem with XYZ process? Just trolling Slack to see, okay, what are the things that we can get in there before we fully roll it out. So that was the soft rollout over like a 2-month period. And then once we were confident that we had everything good to go, we did a full rollout. So this is a screenshot of the email that was sent out company-wide. It was a robust email that was meant to be as short and sweet as possible, but to really show the why this Guru implementation is important to the company as a whole, how everyone can use it, and really get everyone's buy-in. So that went really, really well, better than I even expected. Over the course of the first 2 months that we implemented Guru, we had a 99% adoption in the platform. So almost everyone got in there and started using Guru. What I really like looking back is just seeing how effective and impactful it was right away from a question answering standpoint. So you can see these search terms that I screenshotted here on the right-hand side from our first 2 months. So for example, Marketo was searched for 36 times. When you think about it, that means 36 separate people had a Marketo question that could have gone to the customer support channel and asked that in Slack. And who knows how long it would have taken to get those answers. They were able to get their answers in Guru and just move on really quickly. And there over 10 terms were searched for over 10 times within that first 2-month period, which felt like a win. And everyone internally was like, how did we, live without this before? This is amazing. And the customer support team also just felt less inundated with the same question over and over, which is a really good feeling to have alignment across teams. So that was super exciting. And earlier, Cindy, you asked, is there anything different that we would do with our rollout? So there's one line in this email that still sort of haunts me, but it did get us to learn a good lesson. So it might be small on the screen. It says, Educate is still the #1 knowledge source for the Ceros platform. If applicable, we'll add additional internal information into Guru. So think about if it's platform knowledge that someone would need externally, that's going to live on the external facing Educate site. If it's about messaging, positioning one of those feature sets on Educate, that would live in Guru. And I just put a little screenshot here of our director of education who owns that Educate site saying, damn right, Educate's still #1, even though you have Guru, which it was a funny comment, but we were trying to make Guru our one source of truth. So having that conflicting Educate site with Ceros did sort of pose a problem. So this is what our Educate portal looks like. And again, a reminder that still haunts me of Educate being still the #1 source. Once reps realized that they still had to check 2 sources of information depending on their question, we did see a drop off in our monthly active users for a little while, which was disappointing to see because again, we put so much effort over a 2-month period to get this rollout right. So it was just a little bit discouraging to see that drop off. And it just felt bad too because we wanted it to be a one source of truth, but Educate was owned by a different resource. They weren't really bought into Guru because their job is to manage the external facing site, not internal. So it was really this struggle of how to manage that. And we didn't really know what the answer was. So we really had 2 different options that we weighed internally as stakeholders. We could keep things the same and just highlight again to everyone, still use Guru, go there first, but if it is a platform specific question, you're gonna wanna go to Educate, or we could decide, okay, let's take what's in Educate and then put that all into Guru also, so it's a one source of truth. So that's what we did actually. We copied and pasted all of our Educate articles into our Guru instance. Seemed like a great idea at the time because again, one source of truth, get it all in there. But the problem with that was, again, our Educate team is responsible for updating our customer-facing Educate portal. So every time that they were updating an Educate article, they were not also updating it in Guru. They'd need to remind our customer support team that they made a change. The customer support team would then have to remember to go in and do that. That's not their day-to-day job either. So unfortunately, after we copied those 100 pages into Guru cards, 3 months later, our trust score had fallen to a 63%, which is not great because obviously if a rep is going in there and looking for information, they want to know that it's verified. It takes them just as long to ask a question in Slack as it does to say, okay, this information's in Guru, but is it up to date? Now I have to ask if it's up to date. It's pretty much a moot point at that point. You want to make sure your verification score, your trust score can be as high as possible. So that was really disappointing to see. And it was just like an internal department struggle, right? Like me as an enabler, I really wanted all the information to be right. So I'd be like, customer support, can you work better with Educate to make sure you get that information, put that in there? And it just caused burnout internally of like, this is a monster that we can't really handle. So if I could do it again, I probably would not do that to make for a couple reasons, just to make sure everything's easy for everyone internally so we can make sure that all the information gets in there. And also just to make sure that the most up-to-date information is in there at all times.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. And thanks for sharing all of that, Tori. It sounds like a whirlwind going from that 99% adoption and then realizing that you had multiple teams that were responsible for documentation. Definitely something that I think a lot of us can probably, empathize with. So we're going to launch our first poll now. We're curious for the audience. Are your team's internal product experts responsible for internal product documentation or only external? And this kind of comes from the idea of Tori's team having both knowledge in Guru and then also Educate. So we're excited to see how you all are working with things. Okay, so it looks like most people are saying yes, a handful of no's, some are not sure. We'll give a few more minutes for these to come through before we share, but yeah, it definitely looks like most teams, about 62% right now, say yes, their team's product experts are responsible for internal product documentation.
That's interesting. That's higher than I thought it would be.
Yeah, for sure. And very few, only 3 so far have said no. So it seems like if anything, people might not be sure, but yeah, I know that can sometimes be, product teams, sometimes it's customer support teams, kind of depends on the situation. Cool. All right, well, we'll go ahead and share those results. So yeah, 64% said yes, 14 no, 23 not sure. Cool. All right, we will stop sharing that. Awesome. So Tori, next question for you. I know that we've talked a little bit about how you worked with your CSM at Guru, Jamey, who's on the call, and some other folks to kind of come up with a solution for having your knowledge all in one place. Can you tell us a little bit about how you went about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we realized this was a monster of a problem that we needed to get resolved to make sure our entire Guru implementation didn't end up failing after all of that hard work. So what we did was we got on the phone with Jamey and our director of technical solutions, Tom at Ceros, and we said, Jamey, SOS, please help us. What do we do? And she's always incredibly insightful and helpful. But this time in particular really saved our lives. So she recommended that we check out the Guru API, which would actually allow us to link our Educate articles right into Guru. I did not know that that was an option, and it was very exciting to learn that we could do that. So what we did is we got our web developer, his name is Jacob, involved in the project and told him what we were trying to do, gave him the Guru documentation, and I chatted with him just to refresh my memory on exactly what that process was like before this. And he had raving things to say about the documentation that Guru provided, and said it was super easy to implement once he figured it out. It took him about 2 weeks to build the plugin that was necessary for Educate to talk to the Guru API. But once that was built, it took him about 30 minutes to actually implement the API and get all the information feeding in, which again, to solve all of our issues of two sources of truth is a huge win in a very tight time frame. So yeah, he was able to spin that up very easily. So just to give you a little visual on exactly what that looks like, in the bottom left-hand corner here, this is what our Educate portal looks like when you're on the website. And on the right-hand side here, this is what it looks like in Guru. It's exactly a mirror image. When one thing's updated in Educate, real time, the Educate article changes, allowing us to have 100% verification score on those Educate collection articles at all times. Helps our trust score average for sure, and just make sure that everyone can now use Guru for product information that would be customer facing as well as for the internal messaging and positioning components of it. So what we saw from doing that was just a lot less confusion, right? So everyone is still able to go to Guru and be confident that they're going to be able to find the answers that they need. A lot less questions were being asked through support again, because they weren't searching Guru saying, why isn't this here? Asking support. There was just more clear ownership. We're not asking Educate to update things in two different places, which isn't their job. We're not expecting customer support to get information from Educate to then update the articles that should be there. So it really was a win-win-win across all of the different teams. And the reps were able to, again, just trust us a lot more. An example of that is we constantly are updating and adding new features to the platform and integrations. So when someone's rep is trying to get information really quickly, if they were searching Guru and really looking for, how do you work with Marketo, for example? If we'd updated that documentation, it wouldn't have been there. They might give the prospect wrong information, which might be a defining factor between us and a competitor. Now we don't have to worry about that at all. All of that up-to-date information about the product lives in our Guru instance.
Well, that's an incredible win right there. I mean, we love hearing about Guru being the single source of truth, and what a awesome and innovative way to do it. So kudos to you guys in using the API. That's awesome. So now for the audience, we are curious from you, does your team rely on the same source for product knowledge as customers do? So we're going to go ahead and launch this. You guys can cast your votes. A couple different options here. We know some teams are using learning management systems or like an academy of sorts. Some use an external help center. Lots of different options here. Teams do it all different ways depending on their product. So really curious. All right, so it looks like most people have a hybrid of tools. We'll give another second here. So, all right. Yeah, so wow, overwhelming majority has a hybrid of internal and external tools.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the key here, right? That seems to be the case with Ceros and a lot of other organizations. So figuring out how do you take all of those internal and external tools and get them into one place that you can easily find answers, which is why the API has been so helpful to us.
Definitely. Yeah, we want to get as few tabs as possible in that browser, right? Especially for the
Exactly.
Awesome. So Tori, obviously your team has had some, major wins with Guru between getting everything in one place, getting good adoption, bringing your trust scores up, all that kind of good stuff. What is next for Ceros and Guru? Where do you see opportunities for your team to further work with Guru next?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a few other customer facing resources in addition to Educate, so Inspire and resources. So we're going to work with Jacob to get those also feeding via the API into Guru. Those are resources that Inspire is really examples and just showing what's possible within the Ceros platform, and resources are more high level strategic, talking about why interactive and how to think about it. And those are really great resources for sales reps to send throughout the sales process as well. But unless they're regularly checking our blog or our resource center, they wouldn't necessarily know that those are out there. So the hope is getting those via the API into Guru if they're searching for strategic or ROI or any of the other key phrases that we get asked about on calls. They're going to be able to see the articles that we've actually written for our customers about it as well, and be able to have that collateral more easily at their fingertips, so they don't have to remember to go and check out those resources and remember what's available to them at all times. So that's our number one priority. And again, another great use for the API of getting everything that we have accessible and at reps' fingertips. But other than that, we're doing a couple other initiatives over the next, 3 to 6 months. One is just getting everyone who puts knowledge into Guru, the same knowledge about Guru that myself and Kelly, who's also on this call, have. A big part of that is the knowledge alerts. So when you're putting something into Guru, that's really important. You want to make sure that people are reading it. Best practices around actually pushing a knowledge alert to verify that people have read the card. That way you can hold people accountable for saying, yes, we know that that's in Guru. That's the system, that's a process, check there. Another thing, just from a perspective of everyone who's using Guru, just making sure that they're using it to the full potential. Do they have the Chrome extension installed? Are they actively using it? Do they know that they can make favorite lists? I know that's been really helpful with onboarding new reps, of just saying, here are the common cards that a sales rep will typically need. Add them to a favorites list so you don't really have to guess which article you should be looking at, which thing in Guru. You're able to just surface the right information at the right time. And, since we've rolled Guru out, we've really tried to sunset the majority of our Google Docs that are out there, but every once in a while, we're still catching them. And again, with the help of Kelly on my team, we've been able to really start seeing, okay, this Google Doc still exists. Can this live in Guru? Can we finally just totally sunset it so no one has access to this? Again, really not even just for the getting all the information in one place, but also for the verification part of it. Like, we've found Google Docs that are from, 2017, and we're like, where did this even come from? And this isn't even what we do anymore. Who's using this document? And having it all in Guru allows us to set that verification window. So we're like, okay, how often does this information change? We can verify it to make sure that those systems and processes are still true in 6 months from now. And then most excitingly, I think, for the entire organization, Ceros, when we were in an office, had one of the best cultures that I've ever been a part of. And we really have tried to hold on to that in this new remote only culture. So our HR team has really been focusing on how to keep that culture and harvest that culture. And we've been sending out emails with these ideas and Slack rooms and different ways that we can stay connected, but we're putting a heavy emphasis on getting that all into Guru. So if you missed a rollout of that session and you're searching for something, it'll be really easy to just see all of the fun things that we're doing to stay connected and keep our culture strong in this remote first place. Just really looking at where else does information live and figuring out, okay, now how do we get that all into Guru across all of our departments? And yeah, I guess the key takeaways from my learnings of rolling this out and using the API, reps trust you more when they only need to look in one place. So just really figuring out a way to get all of the information into one place. Don't recreate the wheel. Don't do what we did and copy all the information into Guru. Feed it in via the API. That way your upkeep of Guru actually goes down, less verification that you have to do if you're confident the information is pulling in from somewhere reliable. Productivity then goes up from all of your teams. They're able to get the information that they need to sell a deal faster. Obviously, more wins that way. And our support team is now able to focus on net new problems and net new questions, where before they were answering a lot of the same questions over and over again.
Awesome. Tori, thank you so much. That was so interesting. And again, like just so many little wins highlighted the whole throughout your entire journey with Guru. So awesome job to you and your team. And thanks for sharing all of that with us.
Of course.
Be transitioning into the Q&A portion of today's talk. So for the audience, if anyone has any questions for Tori, feel free to send those along in the chat. We did collect some ahead of time during registration, so we'll kick off with those. But if you have questions that from any of the content from earlier or that you just want to talk to Tori about, just send those along in the chat. So to get started, Tori, can you tell us a little bit, how have Guru stakeholders changed or evolved as Ceros has continued to grow?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So at first, I just went to the people who I knew had the most information. Since that was 2.5 years ago, a lot of those people have either moved on or grown their role and have less of a day-to-day operational component to their day-to-day. So now we really just try to empower the people whose jobs are to help their team out. So the people that are answering the majority of questions are going to be the ones that are feeling the pain for, if that they're like, I know I already answered this question, getting them empowered to get into Guru and keep that upkeep is easier than going after people who don't feel that pain. So over time, we've really just tried to grow the number of people that are stakeholders based on who's answering questions the most internally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Another question that came through is, how do you keep your stakeholders accountable?
Great question. So it's not always easy, but we do just try to always go back to the reason why we implemented Guru and reminding all of those stakeholders that keeping it up to date is going to help you out in the long run. Yes, it seems like an extra task now, but just reminding them, thinking about how many times you're asked a specific question. Typically, they start to feel that. Also, I think the analytics part of Guru is really interesting as well. So if you can just go to the analytics panel and see like, okay, this is a term that's been searched for 40 times in the past week that we don't have a card for. You have that expertise. Do you see how helpful this could be if we get that information into Guru? And really just being able to give them that actionable insight of why it's so important, I think is really helpful as well.
Awesome. Great question from Christine in the chat. She asks, when getting the API set up, do you have to work for buy-in to allow for allocation of that developer's time? How did you go about that? And was there a particular point that you won support?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And just, yeah, buy-in for Guru in general. So I definitely did have to work for buy-in, but we definitely had a good business case for why this was so important, because it was going to result in reps spending less time looking for answers, more time selling equals more dollars. So yes, we did have to get that buy-in, but starting high with that one instead of at the doer level, really going in for like the stakeholder of like, okay, this is the business value, was really helpful in getting those the time resource allocated in a timely fashion. We didn't have to wait too long to get that implemented once we realized that was the fix. I don't know if there was a particular reason, but just going in knowing that you're going to have to pitch the business reason of why it's important versus just like a nice to have, I think is how you can win in those conversations.
Definitely. A question that came through that was similar to kind of what you talked about with stakeholders as your team grows and evolves. One person said they're struggling with building out Guru as they grow rapidly, product-wise and team-wise. So maybe tips for not so much how stakeholders have changed, but just like your entire user base is changing.
Yeah, definitely. I would say if you're having problems keeping the information up to date or getting it all in there because you're growing so quickly, you probably need to have more stakeholders than you think you do now, because it would be really hard for just myself and Kelly to take all the information across the entire org and get it into Guru at this point for sure. I definitely did the majority of it with, I think, 3 other people to get it to where it was 2.5 years ago. Now I would say we probably have an active 25 people out of our to 40 employees in there on a regular basis adding cards. So if you're feeling like you can't keep up, look in different pockets of the organization to feel out who else might benefit from getting their information into Guru, and go to those people and get them involved as well.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Kind of like spread the work out a little bit, so you're not relying so heavily on those few stakeholders. This was something that you mentioned towards the end, but wondering if you can elaborate a little bit more on how your knowledge management strategy has changed with a remote first culture.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's changed because people are even more bought into it now. So the problem with rolling out a knowledge management system when people are all in the office is it's really easy to go up to someone and shoulder tap and get the information that you need. And there's certain types of questions that would get asked out loud a lot more that now it's really more difficult, and it's easier for the enablement team to also catch when those questions are being asked in Slack. So I think it's only gotten better in our remote first culture because we're able to make sure that the questions that are whispered, at the water cooler are also all getting in there. And also it's just allowed for more teams to get involved in it also, because they've been able to see how useful it is for the parts of the organization who have really bought in. And if they're a little slower to implement it, they're like, oh, now I see why this has been so impactful. And we are still onboarding people remotely. So how do we make sure that they are constantly able to get the information that they need to be effective in their new role? So I think I'm glad that we implemented it when we were in the office, but I'm thankful that we already have it, and it's going well in this remote first world as well.
Mm, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Something else that we're wondering is, can you tell us a little bit about the Educate team's reaction to maybe like when you first brought up Guru? Did they understand how you guys would play together, or maybe how you would be able to complement each other?
Yeah, I think at the start, they were just sort of like, oh, this doesn't impact us because this is internal knowledge versus external. So they weren't really even thinking about how we could work together. I think also because their job was to enable our external facing customers and not our internal team, they also weren't super involved in just understanding the benefit of getting that information in there, which is sort of why we had to go a bit rogue and have the customer support team copy all of the Educate articles into Guru, because they were the ones that were feeling the pain of getting asked all the same questions over and over again versus our Educate team. So they weren't super involved with the rollout or implementation, but they are definitely glad that it pulls in now, because they are confident that the reps have the most up-to-date information for sales calls about the platform when they are getting asked those questions on the phone. So they sort of saw the benefit of it without ever realizing that there could be a benefit to them, I think.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. That makes sense. Another question that came through is, can you talk a little bit about what it was like when you saw the dip in month or daily and monthly active usage and kind of losing momentum? Like, what did that feel like, and how did you rally your team around kind of bringing everyone back into Guru?
Yeah, it was terrible because, again, you put so much effort into what you think is going to be a perfect rollout. You plan for months, and then it's going really well. So you're on a high. You're like, yes, this worked. This is great. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh shoot, what's going wrong? How could we have thought of this? How could we have gotten ahead of this? But I think in the instance specifically with Guru, again, the customer support team is so good that immediately, I think actually Jamey flagged it to us first of like, let's take a look at this and figure it out. Because obviously you guys want us to be successful as well. And your response time is great. So although it was horrible, we were able to see the problem really quickly using those analytics and then build a plan forward. So it wasn't like we had one chance and now it's over. It's okay, we can start to see this going downhill. How do we make sure that we can get it back to where it needs to be very quickly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely great to catch it early. Awesome. So we have time for maybe one or two more questions. If anyone else in the audience has a question for Tori, please send it through on the chat. We'll give it another couple seconds here, see if anyone has anything to ask. Awesome. Well, we had a ton of great questions come in ahead of time, so thank you all for submitting those. And again, just want to thank Tori so much for sharing your story with us today. It was awesome to hear about your team's journey so far with creating a single source of truth and how you plan to move forward. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Awesome. Thank you. So we want to just encourage everyone to take a moment to join our Slack community. It's a great place to connect with other Guru users, admins, and just other knowledge management experts, and just kind of get best practices there. So you can join that at the following link. Rachel's sending it through in the chat. You can also catch up with all of our upcoming events at events.getguru.com. We have tons of webinars, product launches, things like that we announce through there. And then also, as I mentioned at the beginning, all of the remotathon sessions from the summer are available at remotathon.getguru.com. So you'll be able to watch all of the previous sessions in the next couple of weeks, the recording of this session, and then some more sessions throughout the summer. So please check those out. But once again, just wanted to thank Tori Belkin so much for joining us today. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you at the next remotathon. And if anyone wants to hang out and chat with your camera on, you're welcome to do that, and we can hang out for a bit.